So at the time, um, I would say probably 2007. You know, I was selling cars. I was a car salesman. I sold cars at this place called Southwest Hyundai. Sold vehicles, and initially I didn't have a job. I went to this car dealership, built a relationship with the management and the owners of the dealership, and got a job. And I started that job. I was selling cars, something I was very proud of, and ultimately I got pretty good at it. I got pretty good at it to the point to where I was just making money. So I started making money and went on a couple of trips. One in which was to St. Louis with brother Eric. I went to St. Louis. Myself, him, Melchizedek Gibbs. We traveled to St. Louis and spent a few days there. And I was just more or less kind of enjoying the fruits of my labor, so to speak. But I thought I had the skills to take my talents to any other dealership. So I decided to leave the dealership I was at, which was Hyundai at the time. After which I was notified of a position that I could embark upon in the community. It was something that I really wanted to do. I really wanted to be a part of, and I wanted to take the time out to really kind of put my ideas into practice. Keep in mind, I was coming off and reading Huey P. Newton, um, lecture books, uh, Bobby Seale, reading about Fred Hampton, reading about the RNA, other groups, things of this nature. This is something that I had been reading about for quite a while. I also studying Pan African ideologies such as Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Toure. All of this I was kind of more or less getting into practice and kind of studying. And so I kind of wanted to put all this into effect and see what happens. And so I got this opportunity in a apartment complex called Spring Hollow. Spring Hollow is in the Pleasant Grove part of the city of Dallas, which basically is on the east side. Okay, um, so mostly African American, mostly black people stay there, or were then at that particular time. It's mostly us that lives in Pleasant Grove for the most part, at least at that particular time, that particular section of Pleasant Grove. Um, so I got the opportunity. They told me, "Hey, just come into this community, and we want you to basically, in the long run, basically patrol the community." They wanted me to patrol the community, and they wanted me to try to see if I can kind of change some relationships with which was had at that particular time. There was a lot of criminal things that was going on. Of course, there was some drug dealing that was going on. Just minor criminal things, some burglaries, some criminal mischief. Those sort of things they wanted me to use my presence in order to deter. And so I decided, hey, I don't want to be a car salesman no more. I want to be a full time community organizer. This is something I want to do. I want to be a full time community organizer. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna quit this sales job, this car selling job. I can sell cars anywhere, and I've got the skills to sell anywhere. But I'm gonna go ahead and be a community organizer. This again is in 2007. This is in 2007. So you have to kind of take your mind to back to what was going on in 2007. Now you picture this: the mortgage industry, real estate, is kind of on a downward slope, so to speak. A lot of people are talking about the price of gas. It's probably the first time gas probably got over a couple dollars. And so everything is just going crazy at the time. So people are just losing their minds with the economy. People have less money than what they're accustomed to having in the early 2000s. And it's just an experience that nobody's really had felt in a long time. I think gas, like I said, just went up a couple of dollars, and it was just mayhem, not only in my city of Dallas, but really around the country. Just just straight mayhem to that factor. So that's kind of what that relationship was at that particular time. And so I decided, hey, I'm gonna take this job. What came along with this job was, um, hey, you might need to be armed. Hey, you might, need to be having an ability to protect yourself. And so I decided, hey, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna protect myself. Now, Spring Hollow is a very small apartment complex, probably maybe 120 units. And so it's kind of away from the front of the apartments that you can see the back of the apartments real easily. This is something that you can see real easy. Okay, it's not one of those apartment complex where it has you can get lost in. You can see the front and the back from the front, and it's one way in, one way out. There's only exit is out the front. There's no exit in the back. None of that. And so I came there and I started to build a relationship with the community. When I say I'm talking about a group that I was affiliated with at the time called the People's Lunch Counter, PLC. Is what we called ourselves. And our focus was, for the most part, promoting a healthy lifestyle, vegetarian life, working out, things of that nature. That's kind of what was promoted at the time. PLC, People's Lunch Counter, the People's Lunch Counter. In fact, in 2009, we brought Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. To Dallas for his first time here in the city of Dallas. And I think that was a pretty good experience. We also brought Dead Prez to Dallas in 2009 as well. Thanks for the support of the Malcolm X grassroots movement, who we supported, part of, etc. Organized with in New York, Monifa Bandelli, etc. But anyhow, so we accepted the challenge. Myself primarily, Mel Chesedek Gibbs took on that mantle of patrolling um, Spring Hollow. His girl at the time, Saida, she was also a part of that as well. Saida was part of that. Eric Caffrey was part of that. Uh, and so we were patrolling. We got so good in patrolling, uh, they decided, hey, you know what? We like what these guys are doing. Let's try to expand that to a couple of other properties. But before that, I think what goes to your mind when you patrol the community, at least on the first couple of times, I think you're kind of nervous, of course. But there were times where I had ran into a couple of people that probably shouldn't have been on the property, and I was very determined to sort of make them leave, so to speak. And so you just got to keep in mind in 2007 there was nobody doing this open carry thing. All right, open carry just came up um, as something later on in the 2000 teens with a group called Open Carry Texas that kind of promoted that strategy. But we was doing it way before that. Way before that. Like I said, 2007 is kind of my part and kind of leading and directing that situation. Again, that was way before this whole phenomenon, everybody doing this open carry business, things of this nature. And so there was one particular time, myself and Mel Chesedek and a couple other folks were patrolling in Timber Park, and this SWAT team just pulls up. Well, I won't say SWAT team, but it's like this tactical team of police officers. There was a police officer, undercover police officer, who was in a pickup truck, and we thought it was suspicious, and we walked towards a pickup truck. Keep in mind, we have our weapons and shotguns and rifles and things of that nature. We're walking towards this pickup truck, and this pickup truck is like an F-150. Just the man, which is a white man, kind of bald head sort of thing, he backs up real quick and just speds out. Okay, 10 to 15 minutes later, he brought his buddies, which happened to be police. He was actually an undercover police officer, come to find out. They come and they in this tactical formation, and it's just crazy. And they got like AR-15s, things as that, chest rigs, things of this nature. They're coming back. They're talking to us, and they're trying to ID us. And I'm telling them, hey, look, we good. We secured, we community patrol. You know what I'm saying? We community patrol this property with the permission also of the property. So not necessarily just something that we was actually doing on our own, but this is also something that's supported by the community. You know what I'm saying? And so I let them know that, and they was like, "Let me see your ID. Let me see your ID," and all this sort of kind of thing. And keep in mind, again, in 2007, nobody was doing like open carry. This is something that not commonly seen unless you was a police officer, some type of security guard, something. You had to be working with the police, and they had to know about it before that you sort of kind of did this. We were just kind of like community citizens, uh, revolutionary minded individuals that was actively engaged, implanted in the community, and we had this task. Keep in mind, my feeling was I want to challenge some of my ideological things that I had read previously and just kind of put into place. So I like I said, I'm a thorough Huey P. Newton reader. I was reading prior to that, To Die for the People. I was reading that. Uh, uh, Huey P. Newton speeches in 1970. Huey P. Newton speeches in Boston College. I was reading about that, and of course, I've heard and experienced uh, folks I consider to be mentors of mine and my group. Of course, Mr. Fahim Minka, Marvin E. Crenshaw. I had read about some of the acts that they had did here locally here in the city of Dallas. All of that inspired me, and so all of that came out in this contested conversation that was having with the police, Dallas police. And again, keep in mind they're in tactical uniform, and they're walking to us kind of in a V formation, so very tactical in the way that they were doing it. And so I was talking to the point person. They was trying to get an ID, things of this nature. Make a long story short, I told them, hey, we live here. We got the permission of the people that live here. Everybody's in support. Make a long story short, they basically kind of took my word for it, and they supported it after a long contested conversation they had amongst themselves. Okay, they sort of agree with it. They asked where I live. I kind of showed them where I live, and so after that, I went back. Me and the group of guys that was with me, we went back where we came from, which was my apartment at that time. Apartment 203. We went back to the apartment. All right. We went back to the apartment, cut the lights off, and was looking out the window. I'm looking out the window, and I just see the police. I see one car, a couple cars. They congregate, right? And they congregate. We turn the lights off. All of a sudden, I see like two police officers. Keep in mind, our lights out. They can't see the activity inside, and I'm on the second floor anyway. So they come up the stairs to where my apartment is, and they proceeded to knock on the door. Boom, 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 boom. Dallas police, Dallas police. Now, in my right mind, I didn't open that door. So we didn't open that door. So they knocked for an eternity. It seemed like, because I know in their mind, they probably talked to one of their supervisors or somebody and said, wait, hold up. We didn't get enough information from those guys. You know what I mean? We see them out here with weapons. Keep in mind, it was not a violation under state statute 46, Texas state statute 46, to have weapons. And so they knew that, and we knew that. But I'm guessing their whole point is we need to get more information about these people, etc., so we kind of know what's going on. And so that's kind of their thing. So they was knocking on the door, boom, 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 boom. We didn't come. None of that. This is when everything started. The next day, probably 8 a.m., when the apartment complex opened, like the management opened, hey, they had a DPD representative talking to the apartment manager about what happened the previous night, talking about what happened with us. Of course, the apartment management agreed, like, hey, these are guys, they're patrolling, they helping us, they reducing break-ins. They kind of letting us know what's going on the property, things of this nature. They kind of looking out for the kids, this sort of kind of thing. And so that part of it kind of was squashed, but they kind of knew the players at that particular time. Make a long story short, as I was stating, we was doing such a good job at Spring Hollow and continue to do a good job. Across the street was another apartment complex called Timber Park. Now, Timber Park was an entire different thing. So we went over there, myself and Mayor Chesdek talked to the apartment owner at that particular time. Her name was Kathy. We was telling Kathy, hey, we can come over here. We can kind of do some of the same things that we were doing over in Spring Hollow, except we can bring some additional guys with us. And ultimately, we end up bringing a couple of other guys with us. One of them was my cousin. I brought him, Dante. Brought him over. Just a few guys brought him over, and we was kind of going back and forth with Timber Park about what was going to be acceptable and what and how we can best work with them. Make a long story short, we went ahead and agreed, and they gave us access to their community center, which was called the Dream Center at the time. And the Dream Center was this kind of this upstairs, downstairs, uh, uh, sort of kind of small version of a rec center, but entrenched in the complex. And so we eventually used that Dream Center as a launch pad to do community programs out of, to serve the people out of. We even brought through my brother Chris Key, we brought UNT Dallas, their environmental program. We eventually brought them there as well, kind of temporarily for the first month because we wanted them to be entrenched in the community. So UNT Dallas actually some of their first outreach programs, as far as reaching out to people and doing what do you call those surveys, if you will, was actually from us on the apartment complex that we patrolled as PLC Gorilla Mainframe at that particular time. And so if you saw them now, you wouldn't know the history of it, but I'm kind of telling you myself again, this is back in 2007. So this whole thing about community organizing, nonprofits, all this sort of kind of thing, all of that didn't exist at that time. So now you see a bunch of nonprofits popping up everywhere, all across the city, really all across the country, New York, wherever. All these big nonprofit groups it wasn't hardly in, at least especially not in Dallas, that was doing that type of work in the community. So we used that Dream Center, and they also gave us a couple of apartment complexes. I eventually got a couple of people hired on to do maintenance at the apartments. So not only were we doing like community program, but it was also kind of helping with the infrastructure of the apartments. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, there were a couple of people in the community that didn't like it, but didn't like the fact that we was coming. In fact, we heard initially that, hey, when these guys come over here, hey, they got a price on their head. One of the leader of the group, I think, was named Scudder. His name was Scudder in Pleasant Grove. Scudder said, hey, these guys come over here, we not gonna, we not rolling with them at all. We're gonna continue to do what we do. First of all, they had the wrong concept because they thought that we were just on some police type thing anyway. You know what I'm saying? They didn't know that we was like revolutionary minded, reading Huey P. Newton, Fred Hampton. They didn't know that we was about to be positive, but trying to be positive in terms of community members controlling what goes on, not necessarily depending upon this old structure of something goes on, we call the police. We never did organize like that. That's something that we never did believe in. We didn't practice that at all. We said we was going to try to figure some things out on our own as a community as best as we can. So Scudder, 6'3", 280. He wore a shag. Anybody know Yellow Beezy? That shag haircut Yellow Beezy got. He had that. He was about 6'2", 250 pounds, whatever. Big guy. He wasn't no small guy. He was a big guy. He was very intelligent though, because as it turns out, he wasn't like the type of guy that was necessarily the muscle. He wasn't like a muscle guy. He was more of a strategic thinker. And I thought this was different the way that it was proposed from what we hear. We thought that, hey, these guys are gonna try to muscle with us. Only a few of us, we come in actually an extension, we come into their community. The Timber Park apartment complex. Now keep in mind, Spring Hollow was like 120 units. Timber Park was like 300 units. So it was a lot bigger, more people. These people obviously had been knowing each other for years and years and years. And here we come talking about we gonna patrol. And so, of course, we had to bring a larger contingency. So we got revolutionary individuals from all across the city at that particular time that we knew that would be willing to participate with us in these patrols. And so at certain points in times, sometimes we had to get out there with 20, 30 armed individuals on different points and just patrol it. But when I express all this, I'm not saying this to say like we was out there trying to police and trying to tell folks what to do and all that. We was more so about that program part because we want them to understand, again, the PLC part of it, the lifestyle, the working out, the supporting one another, and not necessarily I'm coming to your community to tell you what to do, sort of thing. That's not what we was about. If we had been about that at any point, any time, in my experience of organizing, we've been gone a long time ago because people ain't gonna put up with it. They'd have shot us down a long time ago or had some type of situation, whereas it'd have been hard for us to sort of deal with. And we didn't really have that. We had a couple of instances, had a couple of little skirmishes, but it wasn't to the point to whereas we absolutely felt that, hey, this is 100%. Our life is on the line. Absolute dangerous. And so Scudder, first time I seen Scudder. Scudder's in he's it's in this he's in the office. Me and Mel Chesdale, we come in the office, like the Timber Park office. We come in Timber Park office. Scudder's in there in the manager office sitting down. He's arguing with him, but he's not really like arguing. He's more like, not aggressively arguing. He's arguing with him more like on a more of a softer approach, I should say. But anyway, he's going back and forth. But this is the first time we see him. You know what I'm saying? And the first time he sees us, he looks at us like, y'all, I guess y'all the security. Okay. Y'all the guys is gonna be on the property now. So he walks around us, walks outside. The manager, Kathy, and the apartment manager, I want to say her name was Maria. I want to say that. They follow him out. So we kind of follow behind them, and they kind of show us where he lives at. In his window was one of those signs where it got the man with the gun, saying no trespassing. Got the man with the gun, sort of thing. And it was like, oh, okay, so this is the kind of thing we're gonna be dealing with here at Timber Park. And so, as it turns out, he had like all the guys in the community. I'm talking about all the little young guys. They worked with him. They was part of his network. They had a couple things going on. So our whole thing was when we first came. Anytime we first came to the community, we want to do like a community event to sort of kind of announce ourselves. We didn't want to just come in and just immediately start trying to do certain things. So we offered. We did what we call Community Unification Day, which was a community barbecue that we did. And basically it allowed certain residents to come talk to us about what they felt was going on in the community, but also eat with us for free, in a sense. Because again, it's our mutual aid part of it that we did from the Dream Center. And they came, they ate with us for free, and they talked to us about some things. So not only was they talking about crime, but they was also talking about like jobs, environmental issues, police brutality, that sort of thing, which was a part of that conversation at the time here in the city of Dallas, which was very, that happened a lot here in the city. They talked about all of that. And so we had all of that sort of on our backs, okay? So interesting enough to talk about the police part, there was one particular time myself, Mel Chesedek, others was on the property. I had gotten a call from Mel, and I was over at Spring Hollow, kind of in my house over at Spring Hollow. Mel called me over because Mel Chesney lived on Timber Park property. He was one of those that went ahead and lived on the Timber Park property. You know what I'm saying? Primarily it was me and Mel that was kind of feeding off each other as the main components. And there was a couple of people that was with us. But, ultimately it was everything worked out for me and Mel. So Mel called me over off the radio. I ran over there with my weapon. Now imagine 2007, black man. I wasn't in any particular uniform. I had regular clothes on. I'm running across the street with a shotgun. Um, and he's telling me something's going on in the property. Well, what I noticed was a couple of guys that were with me were actually being detained by the police because they had weapons. Again, not all the police was aware that we had weapons, but they were actually being detained at the time. And so I went to the police and said, "Hey, what's going on? Keep my me and Mel Chesney coming." Mel Chesney stays about 50 yards away. He has an assault weapon, and he's in a kneeling position at that particular time. He's in a kneeling position, kind of trying to stay out the way, sort of thing. And the community is seeing what's going on, like, oh, they into it with the police. Oh, they got guns, sort of thing. So everybody think we finna go to jail or something. You know what I'm saying? That's what they thinking. But anyway. So I walks up to the police. A couple people was with me. I walk up to the police. I hand my shotgun out to somebody, and they actually got another shotgun that belonged to me as well. That the police had that they had took off from one of the individuals that they detained because they didn't know what was going on. All they know is a black man's walking with a shotgun, and what's going on. So the police has my shotgun, and he's struggling trying to make sure that the weapon is not loaded. He didn't press the button at the he didn't press the button to try to kick the bullet out or whatever. He was struggling to do that. He didn't know. He was just trying to do it with his hand without pressing it. So he didn't know. So I went ahead and I said, "Hey, I can go ahead and unchamber that weapon for you. Let me, I asked him to try to see it, tried to grab it. And so me and him kind of had this little verbal thing about me trying to get it, the intensity just goes up. He's already nervous because he got the community here. You got Mel Chesney that 50 yards away, 100 feet 50 away with a rifle. You got these two guys here that's sitting down. They had weapons, and here I come. I have a weapon. I pass it to somebody else, and I'm trying to talk to you about, hey, this is my weapon. I can help you, assist you with it. So you had this whole thing going on. To make a long story short, obviously we got the weapons back, but it just began this kind of relationship as far as the police is concerned. It began this relationship of almost an adversarial position. What I failed to mention initially is that before we came on Timber Park, the police was patrolling there. So we ultimately took their jobs. So they was patrolling. The owner, the management, they was not happy with the police patrolling the community. They was not happy with them at all because they felt that they was very ineffective. And I think largely this being ineffective had to do with just the relationship part with the community. That's what I think. I think that's the biggest thing is that a lot of times the police or these outside forces don't necessarily have the relationship with the community or can grow the relationship. Number one, they don't live there. Number two, they just don't feel responsible to it. It's a job for them, right? And so it wasn't necessarily a job for us. It was our livelihoods that for us, you know what I mean? Because we live there. And so oftentimes when we dealt with certain things, we had to deal with things strategically. We couldn't just do certain things and then just be just that. Our job was not to attempt to try to be the police. Our job was to be community organizers. And so that's what we did. And essentially, our success, and I'll talk about it to a certain point, is that we were able to interact with Scudder and kind of get a certain understanding with Scudder. Like, hey, Scudder, this is what we're about. We understand this is what you're about. Hey, we're gonna have to end this what you're doing in the manner that you're doing it. And so that was our beginning parts with organizing in Timber Park. Again, we use a dream center as we use a dream center as our launch point, first and foremost, understanding that was our base. And also coming from Spring Hollow, using that as experience. So that's how GMF, Guerrilla Mainframe, events got started in this whole thing about armed patrols and things of this nature in the community, which for us, again, our primary responsibility was we were community organizers first and foremost. That's our perspective. That's what we were. And so I don't think anyone got that confused after interacting with us at that time. I think that we brought some good initial programs. Again, at that particular time, there wasn't any big nonprofits. There wasn't groups out here open carrying, doing armed patrols. There wasn't a lot of mutual aid type of thing other than what was going on in churches. Churches, I always did the mutual aid, but there wasn't any revolutionary groups that was out here at the time just doing mutual aid, things of nature, providing for the community, giving books. And so what we had, and from my experiences, was dealing with Bandeli Tayumba, the owner of Pan African Connection, and being connected with some elders in the community as kind of that tutelage that we used to kind of give us the courage to kind of stand on what we ultimately did. So we will continue this conversation. I just kind of want to create a situation where you kind of understand how Guerrilla Mainframe came about and the struggle that it did. We started at Spring Hollow, built a relationship, went across the street to Timber Park, had the relationship with Timber Park, ran across some individuals like Scudder and some of the guys that worked with them, and we had to kind of try to figure out how to work with that relationship. In the end, of course, as I will talk about in other videos, we had to deal with the police and how that relationship worked, and even the challenges that we put upon the police department, the Dallas Police at that particular time, and also dealing back again the community elements with Scudder and trying to balance that out. So that's what we got here. Peace and power. We'll get back with it.